These are all the islands in the One Piece world, and these are all the crews that control them. So in this video, I'll explain exactly how many islands each crew has, and also rank them to see who controls the most territory in the entire story. For example, the Beast Pirates love enslaving people and spreading war, which obviously earned them a sizable territory. Firstly, they participated in a conspiracy to take over Wano by eliminating members of the Kozuki family and turning the entire country into a massive weapon factory. These weapons were then shipped out to Dressrosa to be sold on the black market. Now, although Dressrosa wasn't directly under their control, the Beast Pirates had some influence over the country through their proxy, Doflamingo. It was an active part of their illegal arms trade, and it even had a hidden factory and harbor inside the country as well. So we can count both Wano and Dressrosa as their territory. Similarly, Punk Hazard could also be considered part of the Beast Pirates' territory, since Caesar Clown took over the island under their orders to create chemical weapons and Smile Devil Fruits for Kaido's army. Moving on, the Beast Pirates also occupied an unnamed winter island, which is one of Kaido's favorites. Although we don't know much about it, we know that this island briefly went through a revolution before X-Drake intervened under Kaido's orders and arrested Caribou. Similar to Wano, this island was also used as a giant facility to create weapons. Lastly, the Beast Pirates' base of operations is called Onigashima. It's pretty much a giant skull that most likely belongs to an ancient giant the likes of Oars. So all of their territory combined will earn the Beast Pirates the 4th spot on this list. At the end of each segment, we'll also theorize how much territory a crew will have at the end of the series. And considering Beast Pirates already lost everything when the Straw Hats defeated them, they will, unfortunately, end up in the last place at the end of the series with 0 islands to their name. One of the most mysterious crews in One Piece is definitely the red-haired pirates. From the looks of it, they mostly spend their time enjoying their freedoms and making sure their territories are safe. Speaking of territories, there's only one confirmed island that we know belongs to the red-haired pirates, 𝐷𝗫𝗄 Island. We know this because Bartolomeo tried to take it over for the Straw Hat Pirates during a cover story. This didn't really work for him, however, as he was beaten up and even his ship was destroyed by Yasopp. And although 𝐷𝗫𝗄 is the only confirmed territory of this crew, they likely have many more, with one of them being Fuchsia Village in the Goa Kingdom, for example. The entire crew spent a lot of time there and made many friends, and if anyone ever attacked the village, I'm sure they would come to defend it. Another unconfirmed territory of the red-haired pirates is Elbaf, the Island of Giants. We know this because Shanks successfully defended it against Kid Pirates back in chapter 1079. Now, considering that Shanks' fleet has a number of rather weak individuals, it's likely that Shanks has liberated quite a few countries and made them a part of his domain, similar to what Luffy is doing in the story. This is why it's really hard to estimate how much territory red-haired pirates actually have. So for now, I'll have to put them in the 8th place. When it comes to the end of the series, there are a lot of theories that Shanks is actually going to die during the final saga, which would leave his territories unguarded. However, even if that happens, I still believe other crewmates would help keep those islands safe. So, with the same amount of islands, they'll jump into 4th place at the end of the series. There are still 9 crews left to cover, and let's continue with the 𝐭uja Pirates. Former Warlord of the Sea, Boa Hancock is the Empress of the Amazon Lily and captain of the 𝐭uja Pirates. Considering the 𝐭uja Pirates are only interested in protecting Amazon Lily, it's understandable that they don't have much territory under their name. As a matter of fact, the Amazon Lily is their only known territory. It's a small island located in the middle of the Calm Belt, which makes invading it near impossible. With only one island, the 𝐭uja Pirates will get the 10th spot on the list. And considering that the 𝐭uja Empire has existed for centuries on Amazon Lily, even without an empress sometimes, it's safe to say that they'll retain this island by the end of the series, earning them the 5th spot. The Revolutionary Army is led by Monkey D. Dragon, and they essentially liberate islands that suffer under the government's cruelty and motivate the people to fight for themselves. You might be wondering why the Revolutionary Army is even on this list. They aren't pirates. And even though that's true, they are still hunted by the government and pretty much act as one big organized pirate crew. So I thought it was fitting to include them. Through their hard work, they acquired a lot of territories around the world, and each commander is responsible for commanding a part of the army, south, north, east, and west. During the Reverie arc, they managed to liberate and arm a total of 8 nations and convince them to defect from the world government. One of those nations that was named was Lelucia. However, it was essentially nuked by Emu, so I don't think we can really count it, which leaves them with 7 territories. Then there's Baltico, which was the Revolutionary Army's base of operations. But after Blackbeard Blackbeard pirates invaded the island, the army was forced to retreat, and they likely lost control of that territory as well. Luckily, 𝗵𝐴𝐼𝐿𝐻, the commander of the G army, gave his own island to the revolutionaries to serve as their new base. So we can count Momorio Island as their territory as well. And with 8 territories in total, the revolutionaries earned themselves the 2nd spot on the list. Not bad. However, things will drastically change at the end of the series. You see, once the Straw Hats dismantle the world government during the final saga, the Revolutionary Army won't need to exist anymore. And after they disband, all their territories will be returned to the people, leaving them in 10th place at the end of the series. Number 5, the Whitebeard Pirates. One of the most influential pirate crews in history, the Whitebeard Pirates were basically a family that sailed the seas. Although they weren't related to each other, the crew's captain, Edward Newgate, treated all of his crewmates as his own sons. Even though the Whitebeard Pirates weren't interested in conquering islands, they still had many of them under their banner. They mostly did this either to protect the island's citizens or to show their overwhelming influence on the world. Most of these islands were unfortunately left unnamed, but we know of a few that have been mentioned in the anime so far. For example, Fishman Island was previously a part of Whitebeard's territories, since he wanted to protect his friend King Neptune and people from the cruel pirates that visited the island. Then there's Sphinx Island, the place where Whitebeard was born, which is most likely the first island the crew acquired. Besides these two, there's also Foodvolton, an island shown in episode 491, which was later taken by Brownbeard. Then there's Port Gibraltar, the place where Whitebeard sent Ace during the events of One Piece Novel A. Considering it was a novel, we don't even have a picture of this island. And lastly, we've seen an unnamed island in a flashback when Jinbei and Ace fought each other, which also belonged to the Whitebeard Pirates. Although we only know 5, there's no doubt that Whitebeard Pirates had many more islands under them. However, since we are only counting the confirmed ones in this video, the Whitebeard Pirates will only get the 3rd place. As you already know, Whitebeard Pirates are currently disbanded following their loss at Marineford, and although the majority of their territory has been lost, Marco, Whitebeard's former right-hand man, is still protecting the island of Sphinx, so we can at least count it towards their end of the series rankings. With that done, we are around halfway through the video, and I'll soon reveal which crew controls the most territory in the entire One Piece world. Number 6, the Straw Hat Pirates. The Straw Hat Pirates are by far the smallest crew on this list, and their goal is simply to adventure around the world and fulfill their personal goals. Since territories never meant anything to them, the Straw Hats missed multiple opportunities to raise their influence, despite winning over the hearts of the people living on several different islands. Also, it wouldn't be fair to consider the islands they helped protect a part of their territory, since many of those islands have their own governments and rulers. However, despite this, there are still some islands the Straw Hats officially have under their protection. One of those, for example, is the Fishman Island, which belonged to Big Mom pirates after Marineford. Once the Straw Hats successfully defeated Hody Jones and stopped his plans, Luffy put the island under his protection and directly declared war on Big Mom. The second island that belongs to the Straw Hats is, of course, Wano. After an alliance with the Minks of Zou, the Samurai of Wano, and a couple of supernovas, the Straw Hats successfully liberated the population of Wano from Kaido. Afterward, to make sure that no one messes with Wano ever again, Luffy officially declared it as a part of his territory and is now officially under his protection. These 2 islands will earn the Straw Hats the 8th spot on the list, but now the interesting part starts. How many islands would the Straw Hats control by the end of the story? Well, considering that One Piece is almost surely going to end with an all-out war against the government, it's safe to assume that many more islands will eventually fall under the Straw Hats' territory. These islands may include some of the nations the crew has helped out before, like Alabasta, Dressrosa, Zou, or maybe even some nations that belong to the members of their Grand Fleet. Another thing that could happen is Luffy taking over some of Blackbeard's islands after, inevitably, defeating him in the end. Of course, this is only speculation, but with all those new islands combined, the Straw Hats could easily climb to the 2nd place at the end of the series. Oh, did you expect them to be in the first place? Well, I did too, but I'll soon cover the crew that even they wouldn't be able to surpass. Number 7, the Blackbeard Pirates. The Blackbeard Pirates are a notorious crew full of criminals and are the closest thing to the real-world pirate crew we have in the story. They were initially a group that went around spreading terror on the Grand Line. However, slowly but surely, they grew much more dangerous and are now a real threat to the world. After the Marineford War, the Blackbeard Pirates were fighting against the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates in battles that were collectively called the Payback Wars. After successfully winning those battles, the Blackbeard pirates took over a large chunk of Whitebeard's former territories. Now, although it was never mentioned how many islands they exactly took, it's likely that over half of Whitebeard's islands are now theirs. So we'll say that they took 3 islands just to be safe, although it's likely more. Now, the only named island we know Blackbeard controls is the pirate island Hachinosu. You see, during the Rocky Port incident, which occurred off screen, Blackbeard somehow managed to defeat Ochosku. In case you didn't know, Ochosku was a former member of the Rocks Pirates and the previous ruler of Hachinosu. After Blackbeard defeated him, Hachinosu officially became his territory, and the Blackbeard pirates now use it as their main base of operations. Interestingly enough, Blackbeard's goal for Hachinosu is to turn it into a legitimate country by blackmailing the world government. And the reason why he wants to do this? So he can be the country's king? Well, cool, I guess. Anyways, counting the territories they stole from Whitebeard plus Hachinosu, Blackbeard pirates will easily earn themselves the 5th spot on this list. However, I wouldn't celebrate just yet if I were them, because their end of the series ranking isn't going to be so pretty. As we already mentioned in the Straw Hats segment, the most likely scenario is that Luffy will beat Blackbeard at the end of the series and maybe even kill him. With this, Blackbeard's crew would also be destroyed, and they would be left with nothing. Number 8, the Don Quixote Pirates. The Don Quixote Pirates, led by Doflamingo, were one of the most feared crews on the Grand Line. And although you may think that Doflamingo only had one territory under his control, that's actually not true. Now, their main territory is obviously Dressrosa, an island they conquered by defeating the previous king and enslaving dwarves. However, considering how big their illegal trafficking operation was, we can speculate they had many smaller strongholds around the world. For example, years before Doflamingo became a warlord, he went to Jaya, where Bellamy and his crew swore allegiance to the Don Quixote pirates. Under Bellamy, Jaya was essentially Doflamingo's territory. However, if we keep speculating, we can also assume the island he found Monette and Sugar on was probably also under his control at some point. We could also count Punk Hazard as Doflamingo's territory, but I don't think that would be fair, since Doflamingo was only managing that territory for Kaido and it wasn't actually his. At the end of the day, Don Quixote pirates were a warlord crew, so they mostly operated in the shadows, which prevented them from conquering more islands. Still, even with only 3 islands under their control, Dofi's crew earned themselves the 6th spot on the list. Since Doflamingo is currently in jail and his crew is disbanded, they will obviously own no islands at the end of the series. Number 9, the Cross Guild. The Cross Guild is a weird crew that really shouldn't exist. However, here we are. The captain of the Cross Guild is Buggy, while Crocodile and Mihawk are the crew's strongest fighters. Now, we have really limited information about this crew, as they have only been shown in the story a few times, but we do know of a couple of territories they own. First, there's Karigana Island. This is the island filled with weird, sword-wielding monkeys that Mihawk was spending most of his time on while he was a warlord. Crocodile kinda controlled Alabasta pre-time skip, but since he was defeated by the Straw Hats, his territory is no longer his, so we can't count it. And lastly, the Cross Guild currently uses Karaibari as their main base of operations, which is the island that Buggy used while he was a warlord. They undoubtedly control more islands around the world, but since these are the only ones we know about at the moment, I'll have to place the Cross Guild in 9th place. As far as the end of the story goes, I can easily see the Cross Guild keeping control of their islands, which will boost their rankings at the end of the series to 3rd place. Before we cover the crew that controls the most islands in the entirety of One Piece, let's quickly go over the Arlong Pirates. For a long time, the Arlong Pirates were the strongest pirate crew in the East Blue, with many people scared to even say their name out loud. Although their goal was to conquer human islands, they didn't really do a good job of that. The only territory this pirate crew was able to claim as their own was Kokoyashi Village. They controlled it for almost a decade, and had Nami produce maps for them in order to occupy even more islands. However, we have no information that any more islands were ever conquered by Arlong's crew. So with only 1 island, I'll have to place them at the 11th spot. Since Arlong is currently in prison and Kokoyashi Village was liberated, he will control no islands at the end of the series. Number 11, Big Mom Pirates. Way before Big Mom became an Emperor of the Sea, she was a member of the infamous Rocks Pirates. However, after parting ways with them, Big Mom made a name for herself by colonizing and terraforming a group of 35 islands. She then themed most of these islands after a certain food and assigned her children to control each one. Some of these islands include Biscuits Island, Cheese Island, Jam Island, and even Liquor Island, for those who just want to get drunk. However, in the center of Big Mom's territory is her main island called Whole Cake Island, which is the crew's main base of operations. The buildings on this island are all pretty much cakes, and in the center is Big Mom's castle, which is pretty much a giant 3-layered cake. Now, besides her giant archipelago, we know that Big Mom controlled Fishman Island during the time skip and forced its citizens to make an absurd amount of candy for her. Even though she doesn't control that island now, it's likely that she had similar deals with many more islands throughout Grand Line. Anyways, considering the scope of her territory, the Big Mom pirates are easily the pirate crew with the most territory in the One Piece world. Even after Big Mom was defeated during Wano, her children were still able to keep control of her territories, and I don't see that changing at the end of the series. So, the crew will retain the first place. Click on this video next, where we explained what would happen if Luffy was reborn with all of his memories and powers. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one.